Good morning. It's good to see y'all this morning. It is good to see y'all. We are a blessed people. Every now and then through the summer, the Lord sends us enough heat to make us be thankful when we do get our 3 days of cold weather in January. That's exactly right. So when I want to complain because it snows in South Georgia, you know what I mean? I always need to have this in my mind that, you know what? It can get hot, really hot. So be thankful for that cold weather. There you go. There you go. I know. Now, if we get it 2 years in a row, if we get it in January again, then all right. That's going to be weird. That's going to be strange. Anyway, if you will, pray with me before we get started this morning. Heavenly Father, we are grateful for another day that you bless us with, all the many things that we have, Lord. At this time, Lord, we want to lift up our brother Bill Newcomb, Lord. He's having some health issues, and we just ask you to be with those that are attending to him and just give them the knowledge they need to prescribe the right medication or find the right ways in which he can get back to the health that he wants, Lord. Just be with him and Miss Beth, Lord, as she's there every day helping him and helping him get up and move around and do those type of things that we do every day, Lord, and just be with her and bless her and just give them what they need right now, Lord. Just help us, Lord, and as we enter into another day, another time of study in your book of Numbers, that the things that we can talk about today, that we can glean something from it, that we can take something that we can apply to our lives, Lord, in your Son's name. Amen. All right. So last week we got all the way through in lesson 5. In lesson 5, we got through Korah's rebellion. We got through Korah's rebellion. Now, I would dare say when we look at Korah's rebellion, as we get ready to move on here and try to make up some ground, what was the most shocking thing to you about his rebellion? As we put a bow tie on this thing, what really just stood out to you about his rebellion? That's right. That's right. It wasn't like he was being pushed over for anything, right? He had a purpose, right? He had a purpose. And yet he still chose what? He still chose to make it about him, correct? And when you scale that down, we really ain't that different, are we? Because, you know, Korah had a choice here. Be happy, be content with what God has given you, the role that you have, you know, and just do the best of your ability, right? Do the best that you can do. And that would have been fine. And, you know, and we have that same perspective. You know, as Christians, God tells us who we should be, correct? God tells us what we should do. And we have a choice to do that. Korah rebelled against God, y'all. But we as Christians, if you want to parallel that, when we sin, when we choose to sin, we rebel against God. We look at what God says and we say, I know better, through our actions. And so that's, when we look at things like, moments like this in Scripture, we can parallel that to our lives. And understand that while we get so aggravated when we read that, we're like, man, how in the world can he be that, you know, foolish with his decision making? Why in the world would you do that? Well, why in the world would I have done what I did last week? Right? It's just something to think about. It's something to think about how you can parallel this out. So moving on from Korah's rebellion, let's talk about in Numbers 17, the confirmation of the Aaronic priesthood. As further confirmation of the priesthood, the Lord commanded that Moses demonstrate God's approval for Aaron alone to serve as priest in the eyes of the people. Moses commanded the congregation to gather at the tabernacle. A representative from each tribe brought a rod with the name of the tribe on it. On the rod belonging to Levi, Aaron's name was placed. The one who the Lord would choose to minister in his worship would be designated by his rod budding, blooming, and bearing fruit. This demonstration should stop the murmurings against the Aaronic priesthood. The rods were placed in the tabernacle. On the next day, Aaron's rod had budded, bloomed, and bore almonds. The rest of the rods were brought out. No other rod had budded. Aaron's rod was kept in front of the Ark of the Covenant and the tabernacle for a testimony that he and his descendants should bear the responsibility for the sanctuary. And so what you have here is God going out of His way. He's already put people where He wanted people to be, correct? He's already done that. And so He's taken it a step further to say, all right, you guys are murmuring. You guys are, maybe He's not your favorite, so to speak, and so you're causing issues. So here, I'm going to take this a step further to confirm once again that He is who I want there, doing that. So that way, once again, you can understand this is my desire. This isn't some guy taking power. This isn't some guy playing politics to get to where they're at. This is a person that I want in that spot, and here's my way of showing you that I want this guy to be serving in this capacity. All right? There had to be a level of frustration with our God that He's having to take these steps with this people. I don't know about y'all. I would be completely frustrated with all that. I don't know about y'all. So with that, in verses 12 and 13, let me get over there. I want to read those two verses there in number 17. So the children of Israel spoke to Moses, saying, surely we die, we perish, we all perish. Whoever even comes near the tabernacle of the Lord must die. Shall we all utterly die? Now, when you read that, that's not hyperbole, all right? That's just not, there was a real fear. What prompted their fear there? Does anyone want to take a gander at what prompted the fear that they had there? All right. Well, here we go. Yeah. Yes. Yep. And so with that, you see that God is, through their actions, there's a punishment, there's a consequence, correct? And y'all, literally, with everything that had just happened, if it wasn't for Moses and Aaron, going and pleading for these people, right, before God. I mean, they didn't have to do that, but they did. They loved, when I think about overall, and I just finished the study guide for Deuteronomy, which we'll be going to next. When you look at the whole scale of what Moses had to deal with from the very beginning to the very end, when he's when he climbs up Mount Nebo, right? When you look at that, how in the world did this guy make it, right? Without him saying, you know what, God, you're right, just go ahead. I don't know. That's a level of patience and love and care you don't get from point A to point B in that situation unless you genuinely love these people and you care about these people and you want them. You want what's best for them. And that's why when they make these foolish mistakes, when you got people, basically tribalism, this person's a passionate, eloquent speaker, so I got to follow him. In the New Testament, there was an issue with that, right? There was an issue with that. We read where some said, well, I'm of Apollos, and I'm of Cephas, and I'm of Paul, right? And what did Paul say? No, that ain't how this works. And so with that, the perspective that they had was great, and that's how they're able to do this. All right, so why did these people fear? My commentary said something interesting. The people concluded from God's demonstration of His choice of Aaron's family that anyone else who came near to the tabernacle would die. They cried out, are we to perish completely? They thought that they were all dying. What prompted their fear? Probably they were not reacting merely to the sight of Aaron's sprouting rod, but to all the events of the past few days. They had seen the earth open up and swallow those who had rebelled against Moses' authority. They had witnessed fire coming from heaven to destroy those who wanted to replace Aaron's family as priest. They had a plague destroy thousands of their countrymen who had sympathized with the rebels. Now they had witnessed God's miraculous demonstration that He had chosen Aaron and the Levites to be His priestly tribe. At last they realized the importance of accepting God's choices and the great danger involved in ignoring or defying God's plans. If God destroyed His people in such ways, were they not likely to die if they approached the tabernacle where God dwelt? The question would be answered in 18. And so with it, like what Steve brought a minute ago, well, they just had a plague. Well, that was devastating on its own. It killed thousands of people, right? But that wasn't it. It was like boom, 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 boom. All these things happen in a very short period of time, and they're seeing all this, and in the back of their mind, they're thinking, well, man, I might have not made the best choices. I'm still here right now, but I might not have made the best choices. And so what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to me? And so as we move into chapter 18 of Numbers, what we start to see is provisions that's given for the support of the priesthood in verses 1 through 32. Closely connected with the confirmation of the priesthood of the family of Aaron through the punishment of those guilty in Korah's rebellion is God's revelation of how the priesthood should be supported. The events surrounding Korah's rebellion seem to have settled in Israel's mind the role of the priesthood, for there were only occasional rejections of the Aaronic priesthood. And so first, in the first 7 verses, then the Lord said to Aaron, "You and your sons and your father's house with you shall bear the iniquity related to the sanctuary, and you and your sons with you shall bear the iniquity associated with your priesthood. Also bring with you your brethren of the tribe of Levi, the tribe of your father, that they be joined with you and serve you while you and your sons are with you before the tabernacle of witness. They shall attend to your needs and all the needs of the tabernacle, but they shall not come near the articles of the sanctuary and the altar, lest they die. They and you also, they shall be joined with you and attend to the needs of the tabernacle of meeting, for all the work of the tabernacle, for an outsider shall not come near you. And you shall attend to the duties of the sanctuary and the duties of the altar, that there may be no more wrath on the children of Israel. Behold, I myself have taken your brethren the Levites from among the children of Israel. They are a gift to you, given by the Lord, to do the work of the tabernacle of meeting. Therefore you and your sons with you shall attend to your priesthood for everything at the altar and behind the veil, and you shall serve. I give your priesthood to you as a gift for service, but the outsider who comes near shall be put to death." And so with it, this was a gift. This was God's gift to Aaron to have. Now he's got people to help him in doing all the things that needed to be done. All right? This was a tremendous responsibility, right? This is a tremendous responsibility, and now God is giving him people to help with the various roles. There were certain things that Aaron, and his sons, they specifically had to do. But then there were other things that these priests could come in and help with, and so on and so forth. And so now, he gets into the official duties of the priests and Levites, and then in verses 8 through 20, he talks about the revenue for the priest. To the priest were given the heave offerings to be eaten in the courts of the sanctuary. The parts of the animal which were not consumed in the sacrifice were given to the priest. So also were the meal offering, the sin offering, and the trespass offering, verses 8 through 10. Other revenues could be taken home to be shared with the family. The sacrifice of the first fruits of oil and wine and wheat was given to the priest to provide for their family, verses 11 through 14. The firstborn of every animal was devoted to the Lord and given to the priest. The clean animals were sacrificed to the Lord, only a small part of which were consumed on the altar. The rest belonged to the priest. The unclean animals were redeemed at 5 shekels per head, the money being given to the priest. The firstborn child was redeemed according to the law, and the price of the redemption was given to the priest. And so here was the revenue. Here is a way that God is allowing these priests, to be able to have some kind of income, if you will, some kind of revenue for what they're doing, to be able to help provide for their families. All right? And then, so that's the priest, and now we get to the Levites, okay? The revenue for the Levites in verses 21 through 24. Let's Behold, I have given the children of Levi all the tithes in Israel as an inheritance in return for the work for which they performed, the work of the tabernacle of meeting. Hereafter the children of Israel shall not come near the tabernacle of meeting, lest they bear sin and die. But the Levites shall perform the work of the tabernacle of meeting, and they shall bear their iniquity. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations, that among the children of Israel they shall have no inheritance. For the tithes of the children of Israel, which they offer up as a heave offering to the Lord, I have given to the Levites as an inheritance. Therefore I have said to them, among the children of Israel they shall have no inheritance. And then we see finally, the priest received the tithe of the tithe that was there. Not even the Levites were exempt from the Lord's law to tithe of their prosperity. They brought a tenth of the tithe to give for the support of the priest. These were the Lord's provisions for the support of the priest and Levites. Let me see, get over here to this one. And so what God is doing here is He's saying that I'm giving everybody a means here, and even out of that means, even though whatever it is, you still have an obligation to give back to the Lord, right? You still have an obligation to give back. Whatever you have, there's something you can give, right? There's something you can give. God has gave provisions through the sacrificial system that anybody could find something to have offered to Him. And with that also the obligation to tithe, no matter where you are at. Well, you're being given this revenue based off of tithes. Well, you got to tithe what's been already tithed, so to speak. So there's no excuse not to give back to God, in other words. My commentary says in verse 32, God assured the Levites that when they used the tithes given by Israel properly, they were not sinning. If, however, they misused them and profaned the sacred gifts of the sons of Israel, they would be guilty of a capital crime and would die. Verse 32. Is there a responsibility, y'all, to be responsible with what God gives us? God gives us various things. I mean, we have skills, we have gifts that He gives us. What do we do with those skills and gifts? We create careers, right? We find things to do. Some people, are some people gonna be more blessed than others? Of course. But what you do with that is extremely important, right? What you do with that is extremely important. So there's a responsibility there for us today, as it was for them, to be very responsible with what we've been given. All right. Let's see here. All right. The laws for purification from death in chapter 19. Under the divine judgment of God, death was a regular part of the lives of the children of Israel during their wilderness wanderings. Now, you think about that for a second, okay? You are wandering through this wilderness, all right? What would that feel like to understand? Well, let me ask you this so I can get y'all involved, because I've been doing a lot of talking. I want to get y'all talking. If you're in that wilderness and you're wandering around, what's your mindset? What's probably going through your head? What'd you say? We gonna ever get there? It's like that kid. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Yes, indeed. It's like this is like the fifth mountain, Dad. You said it was right around that mountain, right? There's a couple things. I mean, you take all into account. Absolutely. Are we ever going to get there, right? I'm sorry? Fear. Questioning leadership. Do they know? Do they know where we're going? You know what I mean? How many of y'all been driving and it's like, you don't find the route where you're supposed to go? Do you know where you're at? I'm just following Google, okay? Do you know, question leadership. Are they making the right decisions? Have they already questioned leadership? Yes, they have. And they will question leadership again, y'all. And so you think about the mindset of these people as they're going through these wilderness wanderings and where they're going. number one, do I have enough faith to trust God, right? Do I have enough faith to trust God? And here's the other thing. You've got two pathways in this group of people, right? You got two pathways. You got a generation that's going to die out. And you got another generation that's going to lead, right? That's a lot that's a lot. Moses understood that, right? Moses understood that. Yes, sir. That is a very good question. Yes, that's right. Before the spies, had anybody died? Well, I mean, yes, somebody. I mean, just generally speaking, somebody would have had to have died because bodies are bodies. Right. Well, I mean, there's. Well, I mean, nothing that I can recall off the top of my head points to, in Scripture, like this person died or that many people died or not, off the top of my head. But just generally speaking, whether you got food or you don't have food, people develop ailments and whatnot. So it's hard to believe that no one didn't die. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Natural causes, those type of things. Now, I'm sorry? They were told as soon. Yes, but here's the thing that you got to balance with that. Okay, all right. Yes, they were told that because of their lack of faith, those I believe that was over the age of 20, I believe, you're not getting in. You're not getting in. And I'm gonna under that, then yes. And the only exception was who? Caleb and Joshua. And so with that, yes, they were told, but how much do we really remember as people, though, too, right? Now, I would like to think that if God said that to me, I would remember that, right? That's a pretty big detail. Well, the human condition is the human condition. And y'all, as people, there's a lot of things I should remember, right? There's a lot of things that I should think about. There's things that happen that government should remember, correct? And yet we still keep making the same mistakes, or we forget, right? I mean, my goodness, 9/11 happened, and what did we say? We'll never forget, right? How many people forgot 2 years later? Okay? And so what I mean by that is we have a very short memory. So yes, they were told, but how many actually remembered, right? Because yes, as you take this journey, and some are dying here, and some are dying there, and some are dying here, and some are dying there, and you're still on this pathway, you're not thinking, well, that's going to happen to me, right? They're just unfortunate, right? It's just like today, right? You read in the newspaper that so-and-so passed away because of this, this, and this, or so-and-so had a heart attack. Well, I eat the same way that he eats, you know what I'm saying? I'm probably, it's not going to happen to me, right? It never happens to the ones who think it's not going to happen to them, but then it does. And so all of that, Tony, to say, yes, they were told, but did they listen? Did they believe? There you go. Did they believe it? There you go. That's right. God's an all-loving God, and He will never, ever let that happen to us. Ooh. God was very specific that, above that age. Oh. Well, through that period of 40 years of wandering, right? They gradually passed off through different things, because we know when they come up to enter the promised land, they're gone. They're not there. because that new because you got to think about that, right? At age, those over age 20, by the time you get to the Jordan, you're now 60. All right, if you made it, which I don't think you did, but if you made it there, you're 60. But hindsight being 2020, all those under 20 are now in their 50s, right? So what I mean to say is you had a whole nother level of leadership now. These kids, quote unquote kids, are now adults. And God said anyone over the age of 20, yes. Well, I mean, yes. They all wandered around as a group until they passed off, until they get to the Jordan, they're gone. Because to balance that, to temper that with the other side of it, well, what if some of them got in? Well, if they got in, then God's a liar. So, and we know Titus 1 and verse 2, right? God cannot lie. And so whether it was heart attacks or cholesterol or a snake bit you or you tripped over a rock and hit your head or you listened to your cousin who told you to go swimming and you forgot you didn't know how to swim. You're getting ahead of me. You're spoiling it. All right. You're getting ahead of me, Dale. We'll get, I promise we will get there in the next lesson. All right. So, how about this? On an average, nearly 100 people died every day to get through the amount of people you would have to. And so if you're seeing this, this is a devastating mindset, correct? This is how you get there. Now, here's a couple things you have to think about. With people dying to that extent, and it was various ways they died. But with that many people dying, that being around the dead made you what? Unclean, okay? And consequently to that, there were divine provisions that had to be made for making one ceremonially pure while being in contact with the dead. So you got to think, as this many people are dying along the way, there's a lot of people being made unclean because they are around it. And so God had to make provisions for that. And so in chapter 19, he goes through this and talks about the preparation for the purifying for the purifying water, use of the water of purification, how they were to do these type of things, and make and allow for people to be able to become clean because of all the death that was around them. And so with that brings us to a close of lesson 5, and I want to move into lesson 6 if we don't have any other questions for lesson 5. All right. See if we can make some ground. All right. And so lesson 6 picks up in Numbers 20. In Numbers chapter 20, in the very beginning in the first verse, then the children of Israel, the whole congregation came into the wilderness of Zin in the first month, and the people stayed in Kadesh, and Miriam died there and was buried there. Now, who is she? That's Moses' sister. Now, how important is she to Moses? That's your sister, man. Were there any, outside of the relationship that Moses had with God, is there any, two people closer to Moses than Aaron and Miriam? No. And so here it is, I wonder at this point, is this where reality is setting in, for everybody, or for him? Here is one of the two constants that you have in your life, and so here she goes. And Moses had to know it was coming, right? She's part of that generation. Moses knew it had to be coming, but then it happens. And so that had to be a very devastating effect on his life, because right after this is where Moses makes his really big mistake that Dale was talking about a minute ago. All right. You're fine. You're fine. Verse 2. Now, so after she died, she's buried there. Now, there was no water for the congregation, so they gathered together against Moses and Aaron. Here, what Conrad was saying a minute ago, we start questioning leadership, correct? Look at this. We don't have food. Oh, wait a minute. We do have food. It's manna. We don't like manna. Manna's bad. It's too much. We eat it all the time. Well, here's you some meat. Well, here, we're tired of the quail now. You give us too much quail, Lord. What are you doing? Right? My goodness. You don't know what y'all are doing. You're usurping your power. We should be able to do all these responsibilities as priests. Well, now you got a rebellion. Here we go. Once again. And the people contended with Moses and spoke, saying, if only we had died with when our brethren died before the Lord. Why have you brought up the assembly of the Lord into this wilderness, that we and our animals should die here? Y'all, first off, did Moses bring them up into the wilderness? No. Who had put them there? God had. And why were they there? They were there as a punishment because they didn't have enough faith to go into the land that He had brought them to. Yes. Always teaching. Always teaching. Let's see. What verse was that? Okay. Yes. And why have you made us come up out of Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It is not a place of grain, or figs, or vines, or pomegranates, nor is there any water to drink. Now, so Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and they fell on their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. And then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, gather the congregation together, speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will yield its water. Thus you shall bring water for them out of the rock, and give drink to the congregation and their animals. So Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said to them, hear now, you rebels, must we bring water for you out of this rock? And then Moses lifted his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation and their animals drank. Now, is Moses frustrated? Yes. I'm telling you, I don't get it from a human standpoint. I can't handle this. I wouldn't be able to handle this. Moses was a special person. Now, in his anger, because here they are once again, not grateful, no faith. Look what God's done for you. We need to go, and they're still murmuring, we should have never left Egypt. Still with that cry, years and years later. And so with that, does Moses do what God commanded him to do? No. He did not. What was he supposed to do? He was supposed to speak to the rock, and the rock would have gave forth water, correct? He doesn't speak to the rock, he does what? He hits it twice. That is not what God told him to do, y'all. And now we see in verse 12, then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe me, to hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. That had to be tough, y'all. That had to be tough. Now, this guy has put up with so much. This guy has done, it went above and beyond, right, for this people and for his God. And now, one mistake, right? One mistake. And he can't get in. He can't get in. Well, but with that, why does God take such a stance here? Why is He disciplining Moses and Aaron here? What's He trying to teach us, Tony? That's it. That's exactly right. I tell you to. There's no wiggle room. And that's right, through Jesus Christ, absolutely. And so y'all, with that, you look at this. Here's Moses, and did he have good intentions? Of course. He's frustrated with these people. You're grumbling, you're complaining it once again, and then what? And so here you go, you can have it. And it cost him. But here's the other thing that a lot of people miss on this too. If God simply let this go, right, the people would have started believing that all this stuff that happened came from Moses. Because who struck the rock? Moses did. And so they would have done what a lot of people did, when we go back to, I believe it's Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, where, where some were saying, I'm of Apollos, and I'm of Cephas, and I'm of Paul. That's what they would have done. They would have forgot the God that gave him the knowledge and the wisdom and the ability to do the things that he did. They would have associated that it was him the whole time. And God ain't going to let anybody take his glory, right? Because he deserves that glory. And so with it, this is why he is so strict here with Moses. Now, did God love Moses? Absolutely. Do you think God enjoyed doing this? No, not at all. But he had to. That's right. But people being people and watching this. Now, if he goes to the rock like God says, right, and he says, the Lord commands you to give forth water, and then here comes the water. Well, who commanded it? God did. But he didn't do that. He just went up and he hid it. And so the emphasis was that he did it, right? There you go. We being him and who? Aaron. And so with that, the perspective, if that was not fixed, that would have went into the promised land with them. And they would have had way more issues, right? You would have had rebellion. Why was God so strong with rebellion of Korah? Because rebellion breeds rebellion. If you do, it's like in, if there's issues going on in the church, you've got to deal with it. Because if you don't, what happens? It creates other issues. Okay? And sometimes that's, you got to have tough conversations with people. Does anybody like doing that? No. How many of y'all like having to, discipline your children? No one just loves doing that, right? You got to do it. Exactly. Because you know that you got to get that straightened out before it becomes something worse, correct? And so with that, that's what's going on here. You ain't lying. That's it. As punishment for their sin, Moses and Aaron were not allowed to enter the promised land, although Moses later petitioned God to reverse this judgment. In Deuteronomy, we'll see that. He was not allowed to enter the land of Canaan. The place where this incident occurred was named Meribah. And so with it, Moses, this stayed with him, because later on in Deuteronomy, as we see, he petitions God, hey, all the good that I've done the best I can do, and I made one mistake, right? Well, you think about Isaiah 59, 1 and 2, your sins and your iniquities have done what? Separated you from your God, right? It only takes how many? One, okay? And so with it, a lesson had to be taught here, and it was taught, and it was received. It was taught and it was received. Okay, go ahead. Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. Yep. Which group were they in? That is a good question. That was that. Well, the easy answer to that question is that whether it was them or their sons, somebody did, but to continue this because this is what God had set up. Now, did Eleazar specifically go in? I would need to look at that. Right, because of the generations there. Yeah, I would need to look at that because I don't off the top of my head I just can't remember where Eleazar fit into that. But I will get you an answer on that one. I'll dig into it and get you an answer. So as they go through here, and we're headed to the, we're headed on our way that way. Edom, we see that they run into Edom, and Edom refused Israel passage through their land in verses 14 through 21. From Kadesh, Moses sent messengers to Edom to request passage through their land. He promised to stay on the public road and not do any harm to the inhabitants of Edom. Nevertheless, Edom refused to allow Israel passage through their land. Moses appears to have sent a second ambassador in verse 19, offering to pay for the water that they might drink on the way, but still Edom refused. And Edom came out against him with much people and a strong hand in verse 20. Because of Edom's hostility, Israel journeyed many miles to circumvent the land of Edom. Now, why do you think Edom refused him passage through there? I thought that was... no, I think that was... no, actually, it might be. That might be Esau's descendants. Yeah, that might be the people that came from that, yeah. Why do you think that they refused? Why do you think was underlining reason? Well, think about it. How many people are we dealing with here? A lot of people. And they say, we're not going to do anything bad. Well, how much do you trust people? I mean, honestly. If you had all this land in this territory and this is a massive group of people going through, they are going to deplete resources, and he does say we'll pay for the water we drank, which is a noble gesture, right? But do you trust them enough to do it? That's what you get down to. You're in a time where not everybody keeps their word, y'all. I mean, we'd love to think that everybody keeps their word, right? But not everybody does. And so this could have been a massive issue here. Exactly right. The Israelites ain't exactly been the model example of that themselves, right? And so with that, there was a lot of concern here. And so we get to the point now where people are taking stock of them and the potential there. So Edom does not allow them. They're hostile to